Uh, we might want to mute Dan from DH.
Hey everybody, how are we doing in terms of getting everybody on here?
You feeling?
Looks like we're still waiting for a couple, but we're pretty much getting there.
I maybe just give it 1 more minute. Stranglers.
Happy belated birthday, son.
Thank you very much.
Well, we didn't throw a giant party for you? No, shame on us.
No, there were, yeah, it was, I may do my birthday observed at some other time, like, but I did walk into, Harvey Epstein had a town hall and, he announced that when he was calling me up to speak, he announced it was my birthday and the audience sang happy birthday in sort of walk-on song style while I was heading to the stage. It was very, and it's my former district, so it was all very, nostalgic.
Maybe you should start that way every year, having a walk-on happy birthday song somewhere.
There's a running joke in the Senate. One of our colleagues, everybody insists on pretending that it's his birthday every day. So for reasons, I don't know where it started, but pretty much every time there's like a chat group among senators, and he pretty much gets, people wish him happy birthday frequently, and a lot of the new members can't figure it out. It's kind of fun. I think it looks to me like we have most of the key participants here. So respecting everybody's time who's on, maybe we should begin unless anybody has any objections. Okay, so again, welcome everybody to our task force on 250 Water Street. As is our normal practice, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the New York Senate website, and others may post it as well. This meeting is co-convened by the offices of Congressman Dan Goldman, Senator Grace Lee, Borough President Mark Levine, Councilmember Chris Marte, and Community Road 1, as well as my office. I'm State Senator Brian Kavanaugh. And we have been meeting now for quite some time, and this may well be the last meeting, at least for this current time period regarding this topic and this project. But just to quickly review the agenda, we'll go through our normal review of the Brownfield Cleanup Program updates from DEC and Langen and AKRF and DEP. And then any comments from our community consultant or any updates from Laura Dodge, and then any questions or comments from stakeholders. So unless there are any other introductory remarks from any of our co-conveners, so hearing none, maybe we'll just begin with DEC usually is up first.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Heidi Dudek. Sorry, I'm in the office. I'm going to try to turn my camera on, but I'm not sure what will happen with my connection. So good morning. Yes, this is officially, at least for my section, our last stakeholder meeting. The big news is that the certificate of completion was issued for 250 Water Street this December. And for those that may not know what that means that we have deemed the remedy is complete. All of the documents are there. Everything has been remediated, and it is now on to the next phase. And as far as my section is concerned, Rafi and I were done. We do have another section that is going to do the off-site investigation. Mike Solicito is on board, and he is moving forward with that. He's the project manager for that underneath another section. But really, we are, for all practical purposes, done out in 250 Water Street. I'm going to miss it. But I thank you all for your questions, your participation in the project. I know, and it wasn't always easy, but I think we've achieved something, really good for your community and for the state.
I will echo all that just briefly now, but why don't we just go through if there's any other updates?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Legan has a short deck, so I'm happy
great.
to
Perfect.
step everybody through it. I share the excitement that we've completed the remedy on this project. It's very exciting. So I will just give you some details now. Next slide. So on the whole, remediation was completed in December of 2023. We did collect all endpoint samples and each one met track 2 remediation criteria. It's very rewarding to see this map all in green. We also achieved a bulk reduction in groundwater contaminants. And in December, the final engineering report and the site management plan were approved by the DEC. And as Heidi said, the certificate of completion was also issued in 2023, December. Next. So now that the remediation is complete, we are in the site management phase of the brownfield cleanup program. What that really means that basically also in December, as part of the documents that we submitted to DEC, we submitted a site management plan. The site management plan has 3 primary components. The first is required quarterly groundwater sampling. The second is that any future ground intrusive activities must comply with a health and safety plan and an excavation work plan. And the third is that the site management plan requires periodic inspections and reporting to document compliance with institutional controls. So we'll step through what each of those things mean right now. So I mentioned to you that we have demonstrated a bulk reduction in petroleum contaminants in groundwater. We initially sampled groundwater during the remedial investigation, and we found some petroleum constituents in the area where 4 underground storage tanks were identified and removed near the PEC slip side of the site. We also collected a groundwater sample after the commencement of site-wide dewatering. And when you dewater, you're effectively removing groundwater from the ground, treating it, and then disposing of it. And in that activity, we're actually cleaning up groundwater. We're taking the petroleum impacted groundwater out of the site, we're cleaning it up, and then we are disposing of the clean groundwater. So when we collected a groundwater sample after the commencement of site-wide dewatering, and we compared it to the data, the groundwater data from the remedial investigation, we have demonstrated already a 99% bulk reduction in petroleum-related constituents. However, DEC and DOH would like for us to document that that bulk reduction is sustained over time. So there's a requirement for us to continue to sample groundwater for a period of time on a quarterly basis until we can demonstrate that this bulk reduction is a sustained condition. In order to do that, we will be installing groundwater wells and sampling them in that lower quadrant of the site that you see with some hashing and we'll be sampling the groundwater on a quarterly basis to confirm the sustained reduction. Next. I mentioned to you that any future ground intrusive activities would need to follow an excavation work plan and also a health and safety plan with a community air monitoring plan. So let's just talk about what those documents are and what they're specifically going to require. So Ground intrusive activities would be activities that occur below the gravel layer that is present on the site and that expose underlying soils. The excavation work plan contains provisions for excavation, handling, and disposal of disturbed soil, and also similar provisions for handling and management and disposal of groundwater. The health and safety plan contains a community air monitoring plan that would be implemented during future ground intrusive work. The camp specifies that for any future investigation activities, i.e. drilling, there would be 2 camp stations at upwind and downwind locations. And the camp also specifies that for future excavation, or, for instance, for foundation construction, there would be 4 camp stations, 1 at each perimeter. The camp stations would be monitoring for dust and
Lost you.
VOCs only.
If you're talking, we've lost.
Sorry? Think I can keep going? Okay. So again, the camp stations, we are only monitoring for dust and VOCs. The remedy for mercury is complete, and we have documented that we have cleaned up mercury across the site. And that is the reason why the camp stations will be monitoring for dust and volatile organic compounds only. I also mentioned that the site management plan requires site inspections. So site-wide inspections will be performed annually to confirm compliance with institutional controls. The institutional controls, which we'll get to on the next page, have certain use restrictions. So those site-wide inspections will be performed to document that those use restrictions are in place. Non-routine inspections will also be performed after severe storm events. Just as a sidebar and something that is very separate from the site management required under the Brownfield Cleanup Program, this is separate. The geotechnical engineers for this project will be inspecting the supportive excavation, which exists around the perimeter of the site on a monthly basis. And that is a DOB requirement, not a DEC BCP requirement. And it's not part of site management. Now let's talk a little bit about institutional controls. So institutional controls are restrictions placed on a property to control exposure to any remaining contamination for the protection of public health and the environment. Select institutional controls at 250 Water Street include restrictions on site use. The property may only be used for restricted residential, commercial, or industrial uses. There is an institutional control in place that prohibits the use of site groundwater. And there is an institutional control that requires the completion of a vapor intrusion evaluation prior to occupancy of on-site buildings. There are other institutional controls, and a complete list can be found in the site management plan, which is available on the 250 Water Street website. It's also at CB1 and at the local library. Next. The site management plan requires reporting on the activities that I've just summarized. So groundwater monitoring reports will be submitted after each quarterly groundwater sampling event to DEC. The periodic review reports, which will summarize the site inspection and compliance with institutional controls, those will be submitted to DEC annually. The first PRR, or periodic review report, is due in April of 2025. So this is our last slide. We are equally as thrilled that the remediation portion of the Brownfield Cleanup Program has come to a close, and we're optimistic that things will move very smoothly during site management. And thanks to everyone for the collaboration, and especially to Brian and other officials for the collaboration in this process, and to DEC and DOH as well.
Thank you, maybe great. AKRF. Give an update.
Hi, everybody. Just also a very brief update. So we completed the archaeological monitoring during all the phases of remediation. We are done for the time being. We will have to go back in the future during the actual construction of the project for some combination of monitoring and testing, which we could do a little more freely now that the remediation is over. In the meantime, we're going to be preparing an interim memo to submit to the Landmarks Preservation Commission, just summarizing everything that we've done to date and the plan for everything that's moving forward. So be a little bit of work for now, and then a pause, and then we'll be back on the site.
Great, thank you. And DEP, I think Umberto's here.
I'm sorry, Senator. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good,
Just
good.
any updates or anything to report?
Yes. Just that we had an issue with the noise sensor last month. We apologize about that. Some wiring and some issues. We had our DP staff go out and work with Maggie and had it fixed. We're trying to come up with some other solutions to make sure it works consistently, and thanks to Maggie as well and her staff. It should be up and running, no issues. I am not aware of any spikes. The only complaint that I'm aware of was on January the 3rd for after hours construction noise. And I believe that was due to a removal, a trailer being moved in the construction site. The complainant stated screeching noise from very late at night, 11 p.m. and so on. DEP was out there a little earlier than that, but we didn't observe any violations. And it was just that at that time. Unless Maggie says otherwise, that's the update for me. And that's all the information I have for now.
Good. And obviously the issue of noise on that site, there may be another forum for discussing that, but I assume there'll be continued interest in DEP monitoring, noise in the site as other aspects of this project move forward.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. But thank you for your participation and your update. Laura?
That would be me. Afternoon, everybody, or good morning, everybody. So just to follow up a little bit on the presentation that Mimi gave, I mean, in the final engineering report and also in the site management plan, it talks about at depth, there were 7 samples that were left slightly over track 2 standards. So just so that the community is aware, they're at depths of greater than 15 feet. So I think that's the shallow samples all met track 2, but there were some samples left behind. I think that's one of the impetuses, for the excavation work plan, and the community should just be aware going forward that the camp in the excavation work plan is actually, I think, appropriate. It still has the 4 camp units around the perimeter. In the event work is within 20 feet of the property boundary, then there needs to be consideration of, the downwind potential receptor issues. And it specifically does speak to ventilation system intakes, which I was really happy to see. So I know there's been concern in previous months and years, regarding air intake locations. So there is definitely consideration being taken in the plan. These documents, I think, are being they're available through the DEC link in the fact sheet that was issued, but I believe they're also going to attempt to put them on the 350bcp.com website. So if anybody wants to see the site management plan and the excavation work plan, which is in an appendix in this site management plan. The final engineering report is massive, if anyone's interested in looking at it, but I thought in general everything was very well done. I am in agreement with the fact that for continued air monitoring, it's appropriate to focus on dust and volatile organics because the mercury remediation was completed, and anything remaining is now significantly at depth and at levels that would not be of concern from an air quality perspective. So I'm on board with that approach, and I think in general everything was done well, and the documents are extremely thorough. And I didn't have a detailed page by page review because of the size of the documents, but I've done a review of all the key portions of it, and am happy to report that I think everything looks in order.
Great.
So,
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So this is, we usually go to any next steps or community stakeholder discussion and Q&A. So I guess, are there any questions or comments from the stakeholders?
I think I have one, but I would wait until the local residents and the school weigh in first.
Great, okay, so I see Alice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was in and out a little bit here, but did we hear from Elizabeth about any, I assume there was nothing further in terms of archaeological windfalls.
Right, yeah, we did get a brief update.
I'm sorry, I had to get off at one point. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
You can go to the videotape, but roughly they'll be back on the site sometime, in the future as other activities are occurring. But Elaine,
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. I have a couple of questions. Heidi, when you say that the DEC is done, this is the question I've been asking all along, and we won't see you anymore. We still have the Pearl Street building issue. The buildings that go on to Pearl Street, which
Actually-
my understanding would be starting.
Yes, that's what I was talking about. Mike Solicito will be the project manager for that. He's online. That will be done underneath the offsite investigation. That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
In the Pearl Street. That's underneath a different section, and that will be ongoing.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then.
Yep.
Going forward, where do we stand with the task force? I mean, it's obvious there's still a lot of monitoring that's going to be going on from the Langen presentation, and that there are obviously still concerns, and I'd like to know where we stand with this task force going forward, to anyone to answer.
maybe I'll take a stab at that and, and just see if we have a consensus. But, from my perspective, this very intensive period and lots of time and participation, warranted the level of attention everybody gave it. And, I really appreciate everybody's willingness to come and, share thoughts, concerns, complaints, and get all the responses from all the participants. I think that, there's going to be a lot of activity on the site if the project proceeds, but a lot of it is going to be the sort of routine concerns that a community board might address. So I would think if the developer and their representatives, as necessary, are prepared to, participate in community board meetings and presentations to the full board as necessary, that I think could be the principal way that the community stays in the loop and stays informed. Obviously, I think all of our offices will stay involved, and if there were, some very significant concern or environmental concern that arises, well, I'm sure we could convene a separate meeting if necessary, if the CD process isn't sort of, satisfying people's need to have these conversations. But I would think that, again, I think that's probably becomes the principal approach to this project going forward, would be my suggestion. But I guess, open to thoughts on that from anybody else.
I would like, before we continue down the road, to hear a little bit more from Howard Hughes directly on what the timeline and the next steps are in this project, which I may have missed because my Wi-Fi dropped out. Thank you to the weather. And then take a discussion based on what information we have.
Right. I think that's right. And yeah, that was not, because this meeting, the primary purpose here was the environmental remediation. So we got very thorough reports on that, but I don't think we have heard that. So I do have a couple other folks in the community who are teed up. Do we want to, maybe we'll just proceed with those and then, yeah, we can.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to address Tammy's question when.
Okay, yeah, so
when we get through the other, if we want to get through the other
I
questions.
mean, it might be that was going to be my main question of like, what's next? And then how do we continue going forward? So I think.
Yeah, why don't we get,
make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Megan as well. Why don't we get, so that's, Adam, that's your. Yeah, let's just get any questions on the table and then. We'll
I mean, just basically, yeah, as part of Adam's update, when he kind of says what next, I would just like to know what potentially timeline besides that monitoring that we talked about, what will be occurring with the site, when do we anticipate construction or any other activity, and then separately as that other person, the Michaels, and I'm going to push it, so like when that work. Yeah, when that work on Pearl Street would be occurring, because I believe it's physically under Pearl Street, would be occurring, and just making sure, like, is there any lane closures? Are we able to get the parking spots back? Right now that's closed by the wall and stuff like that, or is that gone until the building's complete? There's still like, if someone on the street asks me what's going on with the site, I don't know if I have a clear answer right now of like what happens next. So anything that helps kind of give us that more information. And then based on that, I think it would be, to Tammy's point, then it would be good to know what kind of communication and engagement with the community would be helpful. I certainly do like these working groups. When we're coming close to big milestones, I think the community board is great, but these groups feel a lot more accessible and easy for me than attending a CB meeting.
Right, yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, so Megan, do you want to?
I just, Senator, I just wanted to follow up with just a couple of the cleanup questions I just wanted to ask, and that, because I know this is sort of like a big picture question moving forward. But Laura, I'm curious, where were the locations that the track 2 wasn't quite met? I understand it's 15 feet underground, but I'm just curious where that was on the site. And then my other question is, when the new building does get built, are they going to be doing a mandatory vapor barrier like we have at Peck Slip? That's another question. And will that get monitored? Because Peck Slip does have that. They have a vapor monitor. And then the other thing is that I thought that we established, which might also help this continuing conversation, is the hotline and the website and all that stuff is still gonna, Adam, I think you confirmed a while ago that will all still be available, and that can transition into, whatever the new project is. So my first one was, I'm curious, where were those places, Laura, that they weren't quite met?
Just to clarify, we did meet track 2 criteria in all instances.
Yeah, this is Heidi Dudek. I think there's a confusion between track 2 and the soil cleanup objectives. Under a track 2 remediation, there is the possibility to leave some contamination that exceeds restricted residential below 15 feet. I believe there were just a few minor exceedances at a depth greater than 15 feet. So the track 2 requirements, which means that everything is removed and there is no source material, so no material that is a continuing source to groundwater, was left in place. So the track 2 requirements have been removed. There is, I believe there was 1 or 2 cells where there was a minor exceedance of the restricted residential cleanup objective. But again, that was at depth, and that is acceptable. There is no risk there.
Yeah, I'm just curious where they are. I get that it's 15 feet below and that, yeah, I'm sorry, I used the wrong terminology, but.
Yeah, no problem. No, I just, and yes, these are at depth as of what I indicated before, but it's important just to point them out, because if anyone wants to take a look, they're primarily in the central section of the site. But again, at depths of 15 feet or more with no risk to groundwater quality, which is important, obviously, could not have been left behind, I think, if there was a continuing risk. But everything at shallow depths have been addressed.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
there's figures, I mean, the figures are really good quality. I have to, commend Langen's efforts here because there was a lot of work put into preparing these documents for sure. But the site management plan, I think, is probably the more usable, user-friendly document for the community to take a look at.
The site management.
Not as large as the final engineering report.
Okay, cool. And there's gonna be quarterly reports based on, like, you guys come in and you just check. I'm a little bit curious about that,
Yeah,
so how
There's
people to expect it.
quarterly, as I mentioned, there's a couple of different types of reporting that will happen moving forward. For as long as we need to sample groundwater on a quarterly basis, we will be submitting groundwater monitoring reports on a quarterly basis. We will only be doing that until we can demonstrate that the bulk reduction in petroleum constituents in groundwater is a sustained condition. So we're hoping for just a couple of quarters, but of course the data and DEC and DOH will make that determination. The other monitoring report that will be submitted to DEC is submitted on an annual basis. That is a periodic review report. And what that report is going to summarize is a site inspection, which occurs on an annual basis to confirm that the use is compliant with institutional controls, and also to confirm that, all those institutional controls remain in place.
That goes on forever? They like double check that it's being used for what you guys said it was? I mean, forever seems long,
forever.
but wow. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Tammy, your hand is still up. Do you want to just do a sort of?
My hand's going to be up after we hear from Mr. Meister.
Okay, good.
So,
All right,
let's, yeah.
Without further ado.
Get in
So Adam,
line.
do you wanna
Okay,
give us a rundown?
first in line. Also just briefly wanted to echo the others' thanks and appreciate everyone's time and effort and collaboration in getting to this milestone in the process for developing 250 Water Street. So obviously the elected officials and community board and other stakeholders, glad to have had that involvement. In terms of the schedule, it's, we don't have a specific timeline at this point for recommencing the significant activities on the site. So, once we do start again, it's roughly a 3-year timeline. That's obviously, broken into different phases. There's the, remainder of excavation and foundations, and then you get into the above grade and the superstructure. But there are, a number of variables involved in planning the project right now. Obviously the economic environment and interest rates and financing, regulatory incentives and other things that we're looking at. So we don't have a definitive start date yet for the next phase. It's at least a few months off. But I will say we'll give plenty of notice to the community and other stakeholders when we are preparing to remobilize in a significant way. I think that I think that Senator Kavanaugh's comments about the sort of the process going forward in terms of engagement, we're certainly going to be actively engaged. And I think was the hotline, we've said, and we'll keep that in place. And I think we will want to be involved in the appropriate forum for communication and engagement. I think I would agree it's not this sort of intensive task force that we've had for the remediation. We'll be moving into a much more conventional construction process. But obviously there will be a lot of activity on the site, and we recognize that. And I think we'll work with the community board and the electeds to come up with the right approach for engagement going forward. I think well, anyway, I can pause there. I did want to give one update just in terms of it relates a little bit to Adam's question about the parking lanes. we have permits to keep the fence in place where it is now. We intend to do that for the foreseeable future in anticipation of remobilizing. We're working on a public art project for some of the frontage on the fence. So I wanted to just give everyone an update on that. You'll be hearing more about it soon. On the PEX slip, and some of you may already have heard of it or be involved through the school on the PEX slip side. We've been working with the school through ArtBridge, who does these types of projects around the city, and curating it and getting the school involved on the PEX slip fence, and then on Pearl Street, and we intend to have art on Beekman at this point as well. So more to come on that.
So Tammy?
This is where I would like to spend a couple minutes and some time in 2024. I want to first say I appreciate the partnership with everyone in this working group. It has been amazing. It has provided incredible relief and comfort for the community to have not only an emergency hotline, but an accountability factor. The work that Laura Dodge has done in partnership with everyone has been amazing and really provided a level for a project that is immense by any scale you want to call it, Adam. The site is big, the project is big, the brownfield cleanup frightening by what was 2 schools and several homes. So first and foremost, thank you. But now that we're at the close of the brownfield cleanup, and thank you to DEC and DOH, everybody else, I can't forget to thank my city and state partners and our electeds. I really want to have a plan before we close the meeting of what the rest looks like, because the level, I hear what the community is saying. So for Adam, my question to you is, what milestones are you looking in terms of you, the company, to achieve in 2024? Where can this dialogue come in with those milestone kind of things, and where the community comes in? Delighted to hear that the hotline is 24 hours and that there's a person that will be available, and even more delighted that the levels in testing have to remain exactly as they are and they can't increase. That's actually great news for the community. All of that being said, I don't want actually to walk away from this and say, great, when the building's complete, because that actually kind of doesn't work for, the Blue School is no longer there. PEX slip is vibrant and there is people who live there are still here. And as you heard from Adam, sort of like the day-to-day quality of life questions and concerns about where people walk and where people park will remain. I'm not looking to have a separate meeting about those 2 items, but more about the larger discussion. So I'm asking Adam to come back and tell us, before we close anything down, what you think your milestones are, so we can have a dialogue on what 2024 looks like for the people on this call.
Okay, well, I think, I mean, I addressed the question really as much as I can at this point, Tammy. I mean, we don't have specific milestones. I mean, we're operating in a pretty uncertain environment, and so it's not. I mean, I don't think it's realistic that we're going to come away from this meeting with milestones. I mean, we're not. We've been at this for a long time. We're very engaged with the community on a lot of fronts, and we will communicate in plenty of time when we do have a better sense of the milestones.
Can I just interrupt just a quick question? You said that start of any construction is at least a few months off. Is there a scenario where it's substantially more than a few months in your mind? I mean,
sure. I mean, I don't know. There is a scenario where it's further off than that. I mean, I'd love for the project to be going full steam ahead right now. I know others of you maybe wouldn't, but it's it's not at that point right now. I mean, there's, you know, as I said before, there's, you know, a lot of variables, there's financing, there's what's happening from a regulatory perspective, there's the market for the space in the building, the office space, and other things we're solving for. But we obviously want to see that site put into productive use and serve, you know, provide homes for residents and serve the community as, you know, as soon as we can. But unfortunately, and I'm sorry that I can't be more definitive about the timing.
So could we, I mean, to try to respond to Tammy's concern and others, I mean, could we agree that like at some point you're going to have a time, you know, a expected date to start up major, you know, construction operations on the site, and presumably some time frame that's associated with that. I mean, can we agree that you'll give us kind of ample notice if that date is approaching, and then we'll have an opportunity to, you know, to discuss what the appropriate forum is to, like, I just to be
Yes.
clear,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I want to emphasize, like, this is clearly not the precise group of people to address the kinds of issues. For example, you know, there are some other city agencies that may have a bigger role in subsequent parts of the process that aren't part of this because, you know, they didn't have a big role in the remediation. So I'm open to the possibility that there's some kind of task force. It just may be very different, and it may be, you know, we led this in particular because the environmental concerns are very much, you know, pursuant to a state program and state agencies. But so Adam, if you're willing to let us know with, I don't know if we should put some specificity on what ample notice would be, but like enough notice so that we can talk amongst ourselves, reconvene some kind of a meeting to talk about what the approach is going to be for monitoring this project on an ongoing basis. Tammy, does that satisfy your concerns? At least as of today?
I think I can even give you a broader what's advance notice. So to gather the right groups of people with the availability, especially with our electeds, you know, we want to make sure that we're respectful of their time where they need to be in Albany versus when they need to be here, or they need to be in City Hall versus need to be here. For the community at the school, you know, you need some time because we need to consider what school vacation holidays are. Is a public school that's easily accessible to find the dates? You know, every other thing that goes with everything with what is life in a community. Adam, I'd be really honest if you called me on June 1st and said, hey, let's have a meeting on June 14th. I'd probably want to let you because there's no way that we can notice work and things like that and gather everybody together, and the burden of that would be really difficult. And I'd probably say, then that's going to be on you to find a new date. So I'm looking and saying, we need at least a month's notice, just so you know where we're going to be able to get everybody's calendar and schedule. And, you know, like to be in the loop with the updates when you have them. So if you're going to start construction, let's say, and you find out, I don't want a note that says, hey, it's June 1st, we start construction next week. Like, those are the kinds of things where we want to be good partners and be able to share the information on a timely basis. What's timely on your side and timely from a community perspective, I've learned over my course of care are completely different. So that's kind of, we can get some kind of guarantees on, you know, we'll give you X, we'll give you Y, partnership, and how that notification will happen. You know, I don't want to read it in an HHC newsletter that I may have missed.
How about we agree that before that at least 6 weeks before any
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess I don't want to be too kind of, I don't see a scenario where we wouldn't give notice of, you know, less than 6 weeks for major work starting. But, you know, I think if I don't want to preclude a scenario where there is a major change and we have a different point of view and a significant infusion of capital, and we have an incentive to start, you know, in a shorter period of time than 6 weeks. I think that's a little bit, you know, again, this is a construction project that we're moving into a much more conventional phase. I don't see it being less than 6 weeks at this point, but I don't want to say definitively we're not going to start any work without a 6-week notice. I don't think that's, you know, I don't think that's really fair to put us in that position, because there could be circumstances where it's good for everyone for us to start within, you know, earlier than 6 weeks. I don't necessarily see those right now, but I don't think it's appropriate to say definitively that it's a 6-week notice.
As someone who hasn't done, how long does it take you to get permission from the Department of Buildings? Like when don't you have to ask, or is that like you can ask today because it's already an open site and you can start work tomorrow kind of thing?
We have a foundation permit, so, you know, but I mean, logistically, there are things that have to happen that we would have to put in place. But, you know, it's conceivable that things could start earlier than 6 weeks. I think it's very unlikely. I don't see any work, as I said, likely happening beyond the site maintenance and management, you know, for the next few months. But I'm not going to agree. I'm not going to agree definitively on a 6-week notice criteria, which is just not. It's not really fair and appropriate for, you know, a real estate development project.
Earlier, you sort of intimated that the reason why stuff isn't happening right now is a lot of it is like interest rates and securing financing and things are different and all that kind of stuff. Would you be able to tell us when you've reached that kind of a deal that maybe would, you know, fire a warning shot across the bow that it could happen? I mean, because that all takes time. Who knows, right? And you have to sign things and get things approved. But in the meantime, so is that something that you?
I mean, Megan, also, first of all, who is, you know, I guess us being the community. I mean, I think we need to work out we need to work out what the forum is. You know, I'd say, you know, we can go back, you know, after this conversation, you know, with our team and think about it some more. But people in the community will have ample notice for significant, you know, construction work recommencing on the site. I don't see it being, we're starting within a week. And I think, you know, there are a lot of protections, just to remind everyone, that are already in place for the project and its construction. So, you know, not only do we have all of the agencies that oversee the work that's going on for a typical project, but we have our restrictive declarations and we have various mitigation plans that have to be in place. There's a more significant level of oversight already built into what we're legally required to do, and we'll fully comply with all those legal requirements. On top of that, we do want to continue to be cooperative and collaborative and have a working forum that, you know, that meets on a regular basis, that involves the, you know, appropriate stakeholders from the community as well as, you know, government. And we will put that in place, you know, within ample time, you know, of the project when it moves into the next phase of construction.
So Adam, it's Brian. I'm back. Sorry, I thought I'd stumped you all, and then of course I realized my computer was frozen. I'm back on my phone. But just to say, first of all, you all have been very, very impressively willing to participate in this process, to give us, you know, notice and lots of information, and have all of your consultants and experts, you know, briefing us. And this really has been, I think it's been an education for a lot of people, city agencies here. But just like, it just seems reasonable to think that, you know, we could put some flesh on the word ample. And you're saying it's not going to be a week. You're saying you probably can't commit to 6 weeks. I mean, there seems to be, there ought to be some amount of time where you could commit to, and again, I would say specify, notify the elected officials and the community board that you're planning on resuming. You know, if you can't do it today, then
I'll say we'll use our best efforts to provide a notification within, you know, no less than 30 days.
Okay.
You know,
So I kind of have a, or I see Alice's hand was up front, and then I have a
Yeah,
question. Go, why don't you go, Alice? Your hand's up before me.
okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and I also want to use the opportunity today to say thank you to everyone. It's been a lot of years of this, and it's fantastic and tremendously edifying and helpful, and huge thanks, particularly to Laura, on behalf of the community. I just want to ask about what the contingency interim plan, is there any discussion, I assume there is, Adam, on what happens if you decide to sell the site, who knows what, and years pass? Is there something that's being considered for the use of the site in an interim way? Is there any possibility for that? You know, I hear you're considering art along the fencing and such. Are there other thoughts about what this huge chunk of a lot could become in an interim condition where it's not 6 weeks or even maybe 6 months? I think that would be important to consider on behalf of the community. And I don't know if that's something that you can think about or share if you have thought about it. So.
Yeah, there's nothing that we're considering currently. I mean, we've had, you know, people approach us about ideas for an interim use. We don't, at this point, we have no intent to, you know, do any significant interim use within the site. So, you know, our goal is to be able to develop the site, you know, when it's fully viable.
Is it fair to ask if, you know, if you know that the legal case won't have been, you know, to the appeals or wherever it is, and you see months ahead of you or years, is there some possibility that you consider an interim use if you forecast quite a significant amount of time ahead in the waiting period?
I'd rather not get into that kind of hypothetical and speculation at this point.
Right.
I really don't, certainly don't. I hope it does not come to a situation like that, and I don't expect it will. But we'll, you know, cross that bridge if we need to.
Understood. I appreciate you keeping it in mind. Thanks.
So
back to the other Adam.
yeah, well, Adam. So again, yeah, thank you to everyone. This has been very informative. Similar to Alice, I just was kind of, you know, it sounds like it could be anywhere from 3 months to 20 years or longer, depending, because, you know, I myself can't predict what's going to occur with interest rates or, you know, or housing incentives, etc. To get the construction. I understand you have these economic factors that are outside of your control. So I guess just my broader question is, like, site as is, like, how long can it stay like that? Or just more to the experts on this, before, like, can it stay like that for 10 years? Or do they eventually need to put like concrete on it? Or does it need to be, I'm glad to hear there's regular soil checks, etc. I'm just knowing right now, in part of my lack of, you know, construction novel, it looks like there's like what, heavy gravel on it, kind of. Is that what's covering it right now? So just wanted to make sure, because I thought originally you guys were going to be like shovel in the ground to hit the 2027 or 2026 deadline for, I forget which abatement it was, at one point. So so I was a little surprised to come into it. I was not expecting to enter this call with a little bit uncertainty on when the construction, you know, me as a neighbor, I kind of like just like rip the Band-Aid off. So, but I understand the economic situations, but I'm just, you know, wondering, just wanted to make sure, at least from a, you know, site, like as it is currently right now, you know, when, you know, is there a plan if, hey, the economics don't make sense, like when should that decision be made and what action, while we have our environmental engineer experts here?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, as Mimi mentioned before, kind of separate from the site management plan governs the environmental requirements. Separate from that, there's DOB requirements to inspect the support of excavation. So you're right, the base of the site is covered with about 6 inches to a foot of gravel. And then below that is clean fill for the most part, and there's filter fabric as well. The filter fabric is meant to kind of prevent any erosion from happening. So there is a kind of, well-developed base of the site at this point that was, put there for this purpose to withstand these weather events and things like that. So as part of, so there's the site management environmental side of things where we will be doing non-routine site visits if there's a big storm event to check on erosion and sediment controls and how the base of that site is looking, gravel, if there needs to be areas that need to be patched, things like that. So that's an ongoing thing. There's a requirement to be on site at least once a year, but there will be non-routine site visits as well. Separate from that, as Mimi touched on, is the DOB required supportive excavation inspections. So right now the earth around the site is being held up by the supportive excavation. So the soldier piles and the wood lagging. So there's a significant supportive excavation system in there. It goes down all the way down to bedrock, 100 feet down. The DOB requirement is for there's a visual check just to check on the different elements of the SOE to make sure nothing's degrading or anything like that. And then there's a surveying element where there will be markers placed on each side of the SOE, and the professional surveyor will identify where those markers are to confirm that there's no leaning or anything like that, so that if there is something like that, then it can be restored. So that's the kind of controls that are in place to make sure that the site remains safe throughout however long the period is until they start foundation work.
So I guess though the question is how long is it standard practice to potentially leave gravel in place for like 10 to 20 years? Or is there a recommendation at a certain point to put a other type of surface on top of it if there's no immediate plans? And because it's, it's quite clear none of us can predict right now when this construction is actually going to get started. So is it, is it recommendation that at what point would it be recommended that something else changes on the surface?
Yeah, that's the purpose of the monitoring, right? So if the monitoring demonstrates that something needs to change on site, then something would change. And
so the answer is only if the monitors show movement or other thing. Other than that, in theory,
a reason, there's no requirement to do anything after a certain point in time. It's based on, so that's the purpose of the monitoring, is to identify if there's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Heidi,
okay.
do you want to jump in here too?
Yes, sorry, this is what Paul said is correct. At this point in time, the remedial objectives have been achieved. The stone that you see in place is more than sufficient. There's no chance for runoff from the site. The DEC would not require anything additional. But obviously, again, if there's some sort of erosion or something like that, like Paul was saying, that would be it. But there's nothing, no departmental, no environmental reason that anything else additional would need to be done.
And I also forgot to say at the beginning is I do love the idea of at least having some art on that construction wall. I think that will be a huge improvement when people look out the window.
Great.
Glad to hear that.
Could this group get a panel? We could do kind of a joint mural just of this working group. Get a section.
Just a picture of the Zoom call.
Picture of the Zoom.
Exactly. All right, Elaine.
I'd rather draw a tree or a flower than have my face on the wall. Thank you.
Elaine.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about Laura. Laura, does this mean that your involvement in this project is over at this point also? Where do you stand going forward?
Yeah, our scope is pretty much been complete because the construction duration kind of took a little longer than anticipated originally. So like we didn't have a work scope to review the final engineering report, but you know, we did that anyway, just to be able to wrap it up and be comfortable with the final document issuance. But at this point, I mean, the continuation of groundwater monitoring is routine. I would expect that groundwater will continue to improve over time, and if not, then there'll be additional, you know, discussions between the agencies and Howard Hughes and Langen. You know, until right now, the site as it stands is, you know, as everyone's been discussing, covered with clean fill, above which there's a layer of clean gravel, and just awaiting the rest of the construction for foundation work. And, you know, I don't think that currently, you know, we don't have any remaining work scope. I wouldn't expect that, you know, we would be involved unless the, you know, community really feels it's necessary going forward with the foundation work. Once the foundation work is done and the slabs are you know, they're being constructed, I mean, there'll be a point at which there'll be no environmental exposure potential because everything will be covered at the site. So that's also something to take into account. I don't know what the schedule is for all that work, but, you know, at some point the whole site will be covered, and then there'll be just, if groundwater monitoring is even continuing at that point, you know, that at some point down the road, it all depends upon what the quality, what the data show, right? So
I want to thank you.
we don't have any work scope remaining.
On behalf of the whole community. It's been a great pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure to work with you all, and you know, thank you to everybody for your continued you know, passion for the protection of the community. I mean, that's really what got us here. So it's been my pleasure and my honor to be involved in this, in the project, and with this group.
You know, our pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Laura. Any other questions, comments?
So I'm commenting that I hope to hear, I mean, Adam is not a stranger necessarily, or Mark, Community Board 1. So I hope to hear more at least updates on a quarterly basis. Even if that means I have nothing to tell you, a separate notification that I have nothing to tell you about 250 quarterly would be lovely, until you have something to tell me.
Yeah, we would obviously also appreciate that, and also, you know, your best efforts to let us know in advance have been quite good lately. So your best efforts to make sure you tell us 30 days beforehand. We appreciate that, and, you know, well, before there's anything major happening, so that we can, you know, have the appropriate conversations about how to proceed. Assembly member Grace Lee has a hand up and is appearing from a very dramatic place with very dramatic lighting.
Lack of lighting. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone also, you know, as a parent in the community, and now as an assembly member, for everyone's participation in this. And I think Senator Kavanaugh has done an excellent job of helping to shepherd this forward. So I want to thank Senator Kavanaugh and his office for being so diligent with all the note taking and the organizing of the calls. I think, you know, both of our offices agree that this was a really exceptional process, and one that many communities deserve to have. And so I hope I'm not front running the announcement a little bit, but we did introduce legislation this past fall to make it possible for any community who has sensitive receptors by a brownfield cleanup project to be able to, you know, have an opportunity to work with an environmental engineer. And we're really, I mean, it was really inspired by the work of this community and the advocacy of everyone here. And so we'll hope to pass something this year to make that a possibility for any community.
Any other final comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, I guess I'll just take the last opportunity to have the last word. I really do want to thank everybody, you know, our elected colleagues, particularly my fellow state official, Grace Lee, who was involved in this before she was an elected official and has been just a huge advocate and, you know, thought partner in how to handle all of this. But, you know, Congressman Goldman, who's represented, and Chris Marte and Mark Levine, and of course, the community board for all your work, you know, lots of work from everybody, from Tammy and Alice and everybody else. And just all the other participants. I mean, the state agencies, you know, it's a big state, and these agencies have statewide jurisdiction over dozens of projects. So it is quite a commitment to get on these calls for sometimes exceeding an hour, to, you know, thoroughly educate and inform the community and demonstrate that, you know, there's real oversight of these processes. And, you know, Howard Hughes and Langen and AKRF and all of your representatives to it. I think there was some skepticism early that this would be, you know, that these conversations could be kind of smooth and productive, but, you know, I think getting on and being willing to take all questions in a semi-public forum here, with the cameras rolling, I think has been really refreshing for a lot of people, and I think really has laid good groundwork for, you know, continuing conversations about impacts of this project. And Laura, you know, we have other jobs we're trying to get you involved in already, as I think you know. But you know, I think having an independent voice representing the community has been tremendously valuable. And, you know, thank you for DEP for joining about, you know, all the noise issues as well. So I think, you know, this would be the last iteration of this particular grouping. You know, as we've discussed, we may have other forums to continue to have conversations about this project, but just to say thank you. Thank you also to my staff. Dan Byers is here now. Emily Lang in absentia will send her the videotape. But you know, did tremendous work getting this organized and keeping everybody informed over a very long period now. So thank you. I appreciate everything everybody's done.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right.
So long.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
So long,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Take care, everybody.